Get free, get free, get free.
Welcome back once again to another episode of DF Retro. And this time we're talking hardware once again, specifically the Sony PlayStation. As you can see, we're surrounded by PlayStation, and also surrounded by Audi Sorlie, who's here in the studio as well, joining us to discuss this.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
It has been a while.
You can see COVID's done a number on my hair, but
yes, you get the Snake Plissken cut going on.
Trying my best.
But here we are. So we're talking about the PlayStation 1 Digital, or PS1 Digital.
Right.
This is the latest mod from Dan Kuntz and Christoph, the creators of DC HDMI / DC Digital. It was renamed recently.
Oh yeah, did you do some copyright stuff with them? Like
Possibly.
SD card?
That's my guess. But either way, this is a fantastic mod, and we're going to talk all about it today. So let's get started.
In the world, we had to talk in now, crazy 17 friends in your life.
ビーバス&バッドヘッドはお手本ではありません。人間ですらありません。ただの漫画です。彼らの真似をすると怪我したり停学になったり逮捕されたり追放されるかもしれません。一言で言えば家でやってはいけません。
So before we kick off, I should first note that we're looking at a pre-release unit. This is going to be available soon in the next month or so, I believe. But before we dive into the PS1 Digital itself, we should probably talk about PlayStation video output options in general. Like, why do you need this?
Yeah, I was really curious when you invited me down for a playdate and sleepover because, you know, when we played with the DC HDMI, I had the kind of feeling that DC games generally have better image quality overall. But on PlayStation, I had this, at least a personal opinion, that the image quality isn't always that great throughout the games. So I was curious how this was going to scale up.
Well, as you would imagine, this is a prior generation system, so it outputs in lower resolution. Dreamcast was VGA. This is 240p most of the time with 480i interlaced for some titles. And currently, you know, it's an analog system. It outputs 15 kilohertz signals. It's designed for CRTs, which we have here, of course.
Many of.
So if you wanted to get this on your flat panel, you needed to first rely on something like the FrameMeister, the OSSC, the RetroTink, all great products designed to bring analog signals up to your flat screen TV. But if you want something more streamlined, there's other things like the Rad2X based on the RetroTink technology as well. There's also things like the Hyperkin PlayStation cable, which we'll take a look at. Yeah. Yes, I know. And then, of course, there's the PlayStation 3 itself, which is fully compatible with PlayStation 1 games, no matter which unit you have.
I'm very used to that method, the PS3, because I often capture games for you, and the only way we could do that for a while was with the PS3, and it had its own issues, but we'll talk about that.
That's right. So what separates the PS1 Digital from all these other solutions really comes down to the image quality. Like DC Digital, the PS1 Digital is a small board that connects directly to chips on the board. So it's actually pulling the digital signal directly from the machine. So it takes this, it processes it using an FPGA, and you get this perfect digital output for both audio and video. And what makes it especially good is the scaling options. So by default, you can output at a 1080p window, 960p. When you're at 1080p, it's a perfect scale. Every pixel is perfectly increased in each direction to give you this pixel perfect look.
Yeah, when we were playing Ridge Racer, as you can see here, I was blown away the first time we turned it on. I couldn't believe how crisp it looked.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the key here, is just that insane sharpness. And it's the same as it was with DC Digital, even though the resolution itself is lower.
Yeah.
So that's really the primary benefit. It's HDMI on a PlayStation with the best image quality I've seen from this system.
I've never seen a PlayStation look this good.
And it is definitely better than the PS3, which is also a native HDMI device.
Yeah, it looks much softer and kind of a little bit more blurry on the PS3.
Yeah, I mean, it's sharp enough. It's just not quite as clean, and it has issues with interlace stuff that we'll discuss.
That's the biggest thing.
Now, one of the nice things here is, unlike the DC Digital, it has a full-size HDMI port on the back, complete with a little 3D printed bracket that's included with the kit. You can see the board is nicely laid inside the case here after being connected. It's not an easy mod to do. Unless you're a skilled technician, you might want to have this pre-installed, just like the
Probably.
DC
Right.
solution. So there is that to consider.
You actually put me to the test. You gave me this machine and was like, "Hey, what's different about this than other PlayStations?" I was looking around, I couldn't see it, and then finally I realized it had an HDMI port.
Exactly.
It really looks like stock. I couldn't.
Exactly. And the HDMI port actually is in place of the serial port. And talking to Dan about this, currently they are looking at solutions to restore that link cable functionality.
Yeah, which we discovered recently actually was used a lot in the launch games.
Yeah, exactly. There's a ton of link games, and that's actually a really cool thing. So the solution they come up with is, one, they say there could be some sort of a dongle, which I'm not sure that'll work, that'll restore the original serial connection. So the other real option then is that they want to make it so that the Wi-Fi chip on the PS1Digital can communicate with another PS1Digital, basically wireless communication between the two.
This is crazy. So we can finally play Doom in the same room without the link cable then.
Exactly. So that's a nice thing as well. Okay, but before we move into the menu system, let's quickly look at the differences between the PS1Digital and various other solutions. First, obviously, though, we have the Hyperkin cable.
Yeah, I'm pretty curious about this.
It's similar to those Pound technology cables we've mentioned in the past. The PlayStation cable does at least output 720p, and it has an aspect ratio switch, which is better than the Dreamcast cable, but it's still somewhat blurry compared to the PS1Digital and even the PS3. The colors and brightness are pretty off. I think you saw the Symphony of the Night comparison.
Yeah, the colors look very off. It looks too red for.
Exactly. There's sort of a red push throughout, and that shouldn't be like that. Also, there's a reduction in, I guess, shadow detail. Like the contrast is too high. Like these trees at the start of Symphony of the Night, you're missing a lot of the detail that you can see in the other solution.
Yeah, it seemed to kind of take away a little bit from the experience.
Exactly. So, and then it has an additional leg as well, which isn't great. So, it'll work in a pinch, but it's cheap for a reason, right?
It's pretty hard pinch, I'd say.
Yes, exactly. If you have a PS3, though, that is closer with the smoothing disabled, but it's still, even that way, it's not quite as sharp as it could be, and ultimately it's going to be a little less accurate because it is software emulation for the most part.
Yeah, as I mentioned, this is what I did for you on the retro capturing.
Yeah,
stuff,
exactly.
It never looked right to me.
Exactly. And then there's also the HQ2X, which is based on RetroTink technology, and this is interesting because it does output a super crisp 480p image, but obviously you're going to need to scale that, which is where you can run into issues, because depending on how your display handles 480p, it may end up looking somewhat blurry.
Right.
For me, though, that's actually really useful for game capture because it saves on space, and then you can do a clean upscale in post, which is nice. And also the color accuracy and lack of latency are great. So honestly, it's a much better solution than the Hyperkin cable, I would say.
This is designed by the incredible Mike Chi, right?
Yeah. The HQ2X actually
Yeah.
is the integrated cable, and then there's also, of course, the RetroTink standalone units. So there's some good options there. But anyway, so that's kind of a light comparison, I think. But what about the menu system? When you fire up the PS1Digital, as before, there is an on-screen menu, but only for the HDMI output,
Right.
because, like the Dreamcast option, the analog output remains. And this is one of the most interesting elements of this unit. It doesn't get rid of the analog output, and you don't have to pick and choose. You literally can plug in an analog cable and HDMI at the same time, and voila, you have both. But once you're in the menu, you hold R2, L2, start, square, X.
That shouldn't interfere with any game, I think.
No. Once you're in the menu, then you use R1 to select, L1 to go back, which does not interfere with games since input remains active.
Right.
And there's a wide selection of options here.
Yeah. Let's go through them.
So obviously, first, output resolution. I either recommend the 1080p or 960p option. 960p fills the screen, as you
Right.
can see. 1080p is more a bordered window, but it's very super crisp. And then there's lower resolution options as well. Then there's the more advanced option menu, which lets you select things like the RGB range, so limited or full. You can play around with gamma controls and various other options as well. This is also where you'll find the de-interlacing options.
which is essential, especially for me playing 3D fighting games, because
That's
most
right.
of those are high-res interlaced.
That's actually a big thing here, is that a lot of PlayStation games do use a high-res interlace mode. Now, if you set it to, say, Force 240p, it'll give you this super crisp-looking image, but by de-interlacing it, you get combing artifacts in motion. So it's actually really nice for the startup screen
It is.
and the system menu.
Right.
But
beyond that...
Yeah, it looks like this if you play
right.
games with it, which is not optimal. But thankfully, you can set this to a different option, and then you have full control over how you want to de-interlace the image, kind of like the OSSC.
Yeah, so it's like bob and weave, right?
Bob and weave, exactly. And Bob obviously sort of alternates the odd and even scan line rapidly, so you get a little bit of flicker,
Right.
but the entire image is displayed and the fluidity of the frame rate is restored. So 60 FPS fighting games look great.
This was what I was most excited about checking out was, because I play a lot of fighting games, and then on PlayStation especially, 3D fighting games. And I've never been too satisfied with any option how to play them on a flat screen, but this actually worked really well. There was no lag, the interlacing was really good. So yeah, I actually had a lot of fun playing 3D fighting games this whole week.
And I think another key thing is that, unlike some solutions, the switching between interlaced and progressive, so 240p to 480i, is instant.
Yes.
There's zero pausing, which is perfect, because using something like the OSSC, for instance, there is actually a delay.
Yeah, that will literally turn the screen off.
Yeah,
and,
you get a
delay
blacked
it.
out screen while you wait. And some other cables actually don't do that as well,
Right.
like Hyperkins, but that's
Yeah.
because they mistreat 240p, so you end up with not a great looking image all around.
Don't abuse your image quality.
No, don't do that. There's also the HQ2X Mode option,
Yeah.
which is sort of an emulator-like filter, I suppose.
This has been around forever in emulators.
Exactly, but it's implemented in the hardware here. If you like this sort of thing, it is possible to enable it. It does help clean up some of the dithering artifacts that are
Right.
common in PlayStation games.
This is something you'll notice a lot, is dithering in PlayStation games. I think when we played on CRTs back in the day, with the image quality it had, you didn't see it so much. But now that we blew it up, I was like, wow, did the PlayStation use this much dithering? And you're
Yeah,
like, "Yep."
exactly. It does, exactly. So that's one downside to this, is that dithering does become more obvious in a lot of games, just due to the nature of how it works.
Right.
I mean, that's just the PlayStation. But,
I don't mind it personally. I leave
Not a
that
big
off.
deal.
But for some people, there's the option.
there's also the option for scan lines, which was also present on DC Digital, but because of the higher resolution, I found it less useful, whereas here with PlayStation, it actually makes a lot of sense.
It didn't look too bad.
No, it really does. It looks very good. You can control the thickness of the scan lines, the odd or even field. It allows it to line it up perfectly with the pixels, and the result is, it's solid scan lines. So
This is something that, in the last few years, have become so much better, because, in RetroArch, you have all the shaders. And when we had the mini consoles, there was, these kind of okay-ish scan lines. But nowadays, I think people kind of have really grasped how to create these fake scan lines.
exactly.
And we kind of get closer to the image we're used to as kids.
And speaking of image, then obviously video quality is pristine. That's the point. But then there's also sound.
Yeah, which this I didn't expect, was just how great the sound is. Now, there's two ways of hearing sound. PlayStation, I mean, you have Redbook audio, and then the sampled sound.
Well, there's even more than that. There's
Yeah, of
also
course, but, that's the two main ones
Yeah,
that
yeah.
people would be familiar with. And when we were playing things like Chrono Cross or Final Fantasy VII, the sample quality is beyond anything I've ever heard on a PlayStation before. I couldn't believe how crisp it sounded.
Battle 1. Fight.
Ready? Fight!
Yeah, it is. We were cranking it up on the sound system
Yeah,
here.
you have
and
pretty
it's
good sound
super,
system.
super clear. Again, full digital audio
Yeah.
from the system. It sounds fantastic. So that's another benefit to this. Just perfect video, perfect sound. And let's talk a little bit about some of the games that we played on here.
Sure.
Because I think, some games fare better than others when blown up to high resolutions like
Right.
this. So obviously the 2D stuff fares really well. Games like Rayman, The
Yeah.
Adventures of Lomax,
Harmful Park.
Harmful Park, of course, that's absolutely gorgeous. It can be a little less so with the pseudo 3D games like Choaniki.
Yeah, I mean, that uses digitized graphics where you will have those edges, but it has its charm. I am, of course, the Choaniki professor, so I won't allow you to talk about it.
I would say Mortal Kombat 3 looked okay.
Didn't look too bad. I mean, this is the best version of it on console.
That's right.
Except for the loading. But Gunner's Heaven, Rapid Reload, we played that. Looked almost like a Saturn game.
That's right. Yeah, Gunner's Heaven's pretty good. So yeah, a lot of 2D stuff is great. But then on the 3D side, as always, I think the stuff where the 3D is pulled out a bit looks best. So shooters with 3D graphics like G-Darius,
Yeah,
R-Type, Delta, games like that really look great.
With
on-
clean, sharp textures. When they scale up, it looks amazing.
Ray
tracers,
Crisis.
Ray Crisis.
We're thinking
Ray
Ray.
anything.
Yeah,
Just
so
Rayman,
Taito
Ray
plus
Crisis.
Ray equals
Right.
great.
Pretty much. But then you have like fighting games like Tekken 3 and whatnot.
Yep.
And because of the slightly, unless you play the massage chair, it won't look like as pristine as the
No,
2D.
no.
But if you have something with the flat shaded textures like Ridge Racer, my god, it looks amazing.
It really does, absolutely. But obviously, if you play other games where you're getting close to the textures and there's a lot of grime and texture warping, the flaws of the PlayStation are always evident. So that's going to be kind of a your mileage may vary thing. But honestly, I mean, for me, I love the original PlayStation is one of the best systems of all time, in my opinion. Just
At least in game quality.
game quality. Yeah, hardware wise, no.
Build quality, we've been through some.
We've had a very rough
operations this
time
week.
with many issues unrelated to PS1 Digital. Just yeah,
that laser.
I really hate these optical drives. Although it's working right now, I specifically chose Ridge Racer for the background because it just loads.
Loads the entire thing into RAM. So it's a good one.
But yeah, it's the library is so vast, so full of creativity. That's why I kind of feel like more than any other system, having a system like this in good working order, if you can get that, is absolutely crucial. But there are upcoming options for additional optical disc emulators on the way,
Yeah, that's right. You told me about this. I
like
didn't
the
even
X
know.
Station.
Yeah, wow. Like this
So-
is essential for me because that laser is not going to survive another few
No.
months.
I have a big collection of regular PlayStation games. I
Yes.
think somewhere like 200 games. It's a lot.
I'm trailing you in very different type of games. You're very good shooters. I'm very good at fighters.
That's right.
So we had a very wide range of games to play this week.
Yeah.
Because I brought some of my collection as well. And this is the best way I've ever rediscovered some of these games. Because I've always had, as I mentioned at the beginning, the image quality has never been satisfying for me now that we moved to flat screen. But now with this is going to be the way I play PlayStation from now on.
That's really it. If you have a CRT like this, I'm still partial to this.
If you have 3 CRT PVMs in your house, you'll be fine. Like
Exactly.
John Linneman.
But for most people that want to play on their modern display, and I'm using an LG C8 OLED, and by the way, it's not stretched back there.
Nope.
I'm using the zoom function on the TV to sort of fill that space for the purposes of this. But when you actually play it, it's absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's kind of all there is to say about this. It's an amazing product. We spent the week playing with it, playing a lot of games on here. Everything just looks and sounds amazing. And man, the PlayStation, what an amazing system in terms of library.
In terms of library, you might have one of my favorites. I love video games so much that it's hard for me to pick one console. But I have to say this week, with you playing so many PlayStation games, might have been the most fun I've had with you, just because of the wide range of games we were allowed to
Yeah,
play.
so many awesome games to play. It's a great system. Honestly, the Saturn and the PlayStation, you take those
Together,
libraries
yeah.
together, and I think it's just about as good as you'll ever get.
It truly
in terms
was
of
the
console
best
gaming.
generation.
It really was. We're just not there. These AAA cinematic experiences, they're not doing it for me.
No.
Get the PlayStation 1. But that's going to do it for this episode, so thanks for joining me, Audie.
Anytime.
And if you guys enjoyed this video, as always, be sure to like and subscribe and ring the notification bell. You know the drill, all that good stuff. And until next time, stay retro.
トイレ行かなくちゃいけないんです。
そうそう、ブリブリ。
まあ、分かったわ。でももっと上品にしてちょうだいね。
心配ご無用。肛門は拭きます。
そう、へへ。